we got a round of straddles going, and that round of straddles basically turned the game into 5, 10, 20 because the round lasted much longer than the round. It lasted pretty much the rest of the time that I spent there. Maybe give or take a couple hands here or there, but we're playing 5, 10, 20 now here at the Bellagio. In this hand, that same player from before limps in, and I look down at pocket 7s. I'm here in the cutoff, so I want to go ahead and raise this hand up to $80, try and knock out the blinds and get heads up versus this player once again. Unfortunately, the button has other ideas, need 3 bets to $300. Folds back over to me, and it's kind of an iffy situation once again. I think the button's range can be pretty wide here after he sees me isolate the limper. It's cutoff versus button, so again, he can have a fairly wide range in that sort of, what do you call it? There's some fancy new word that the kids are using these days. Anyway, button range versus cutoff range can be pretty wide. The problem is that we're not super deep. I think we're about $2,000 or $2,200 effective, so we don't have quite the right odds, but we also have, you know, range versus range probably does okay, but then again, it's going to be a little bit tough to continue on a lot of boards, pocket 7s. Anyway, I'm going to try and go for the home run. I'm going to try and get there. I'm going to try and win a big pot. I make the call, and we are going heads up to a flop, which comes queen for deuce. I think it's rainbow this time, so I check it over too many down bets this flop to $220. Kind of an example of why it's probably not great to peel pre-flop out of position when you're not super deep, because now we're gonna have to call another bet, considering there's only one overcard to our 7s. So I go ahead and make the call, and we are off to see a turn card, which is a jack, and that adds a flush draw on the board. So it's another overcard to our pair here, and after I check it, and he bets $400, granted, he could still have a hand like ace-king or ace-10 or ace-5 suited. He could have all those hands, but a lot of the times he's going to be putting in the 3rd barrel on the river, and there's just no way that we can call down with pocket 7s on the turn and the river. So we would just be calling in hopes that he's giving up with a worse hand. And he could also have us beat plenty of the time. So I think it's kind of a straightforward fold here with the 7s. I think I lose a little bit too much money in this hand. I think we could probably get away from it pre-flop. I don't completely hate the call pre-flop, but I don't think we're quite deep enough playing the 5, 10, 20 game, being $2,200 effective, a little over 100 big blinds, and it's a 3-bet pot, and we're out of position. So I think maybe just fold pre-flop, but you know, went for it, went for the home run, didn't pan out, and it cost us some money there, unfortunately. In this next hand, the same player who has been limping in, once again, limps into this hand from early position. I look down at pocket 3s, 2 spots over from him. I go ahead and limp this time. Rather keep the pot small, and in a 5, 10, 20 game, it's gonna get bloated pretty quickly if I raise here and get 3-bet as exemplified in the previous hand. So I just limp behind here since we're in early position. And once again, the player on my direct left raises it up, but it's only $80 this time. It does fold back over to me, and in this case, I think we have a pretty straightforward call because there's plenty of money behind now. So we're going heads up to a flop, which comes, guys, these favorable flops. I wish I was allowed to film at the Bellagio because they're missing out on a sweet, sweet flop such as 7-3-3, 2 clubs and 1 spade. We're flopping quads here. We made quads for the 2nd time in this session, and it's the usual, you know, it's just the usual tricks. I imagine that you guys might be getting a little bit suspicious of all these quads that I've made over the lifetime of this vlog, but I have witnesses. I can provide them if need be. It's not just me at this poker table, there's other players in the mix as well. Also, just blame the Bellagio, you know? If they would let me film in the poker room, all would be well. Maybe send them a tweet. I know they have a Twitter account. Anyway, I check it, and my opponent bets $100. Just gonna go ahead and flat call here. The turn is interesting when it brings another 7 and a backdoor flush draw on the board. So I don't think I've played with this opponent ever. He doesn't look familiar to me. Granted, he could have watched 180 videos of mine to know how I play, but I'm gonna hope that he hasn't, and I'm gonna go ahead and lead out here. I'm gonna take a non-standard line. I think he's gonna check back there so often with his overpairs and as well as with a lot of his bluffs. I don't wanna risk missing a street of value and continuing to build this pot. He shouldn't give me too much credit though when I do lead out, because we're really only repping a 7 once again. I wouldn't really be leading out with any other, you know, pocket pair type hands or flush draws that are now definitely weakened on a double paired board. So, just gonna try it. I bet $140 and luckily my opponent makes the call. The river's a 10 of spades which brings in the backdoor flush, but not sure how relevant that is on a double paired board. I go ahead and bet out again, this time for $440. It's gonna put a lot of his big, strong pairs in a pretty tough spot because there's so few value hands that I can have here. How many like sevens would I limp call with pre-flop? And it's very tough to make quads. So same goes for threes, and it's very tough to make quads unless you're me. But he probably doesn't know that. I don't think he's seen my videos. Anyway, $440 it is, and my opponent gives it like a shrug. Looks like he's a little bit frustrated. He lost a big pot recently as well, so I think we can get value here. I don't think he's gonna give up, and he does not. He makes the call. Show it down, obviously good. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty happy with the way I played that hand. Definitely a non-standard line. Played out of flow on the turn and then continued on the river. Works out this time. The other option would be to let him continue with bluffs on the turn, but not sure how often he's gonna do that on a double paired board. Who really knows? We're making quads, we're scooping a pot. All right guys, one more hand here and it's a bit of a doozy. Again, still playing 5, 10, 20. There's a short stack player who is under the gun, he limps in. Player in middle position who has been fairly active, not overly so, but definitely not knitting it up either. He makes it $80 to go. The player on the button calls, and we look down at ace king offsuit in the small blind. So definitely a premium hand here, especially facing a raise after a limp. That raise could be isolating that limp. The button just flat calls, so there's some extra money in there that we can squeeze and get after. I'm gonna put in the 3-bet here and make it $370 to go. The under the gun limper seems to be over it, seems to be a little bit sick of it. He jams his stack in there, it's only $385. The player in middle position thinks for a little while before calling. The player on the button calls as well. So we complete with the extra $15 and we've got a pretty sizable pot brewing here. Lots of money in the middle pre-flop and plenty of money to play for post-flop here. Flop's a good one for us. It's ace, 8, 3 with 2 spades. So definitely gonna continue here, not gonna give a free card on this flop. I bet $480 and without too much thought, the player in the middle folds. Player on the button gives me a look, gives me a glance, gives me a little bit concerned, and then he flat calls. Pot is definitely brewing here, big pot is definitely brewing here. We're off to a turn card heads up on the side, which is an offsuit 6. So since I have the ace of spades in my hand, it makes it less likely that he is drawing to a flush. So that's a little bit concerning because if he's not drawing to a flush, I'm not too sure how much value that we can get from worse in this spot. Granted, there's plenty of other flush draws he might be able to have here, but it just makes it less likely. If he has a worse ace, I don't know if we can get multiple streets for this amount of money. I decided to slow it down and check it, and he checks it back. The river is an offsuit jack, which again, not really a great card because now we're losing to ace jack, of course. Not sure how often he's gonna have pocket jacks, but again, kind of same situation. I don't know how much value we're gonna be able to get from worse. So since the pot has grown to a pretty significant size, I check it, hope to get to showdown here. Don't want to face a big bet on this river card. Not exactly sure what I would do, but he checks it back, we show it down, and all players muck their hands. Some run good at the Bellagio. We get into this game for $1,500. I rack it up soon after that. Don't add on an additional $1 after the initial buy-in. Cash out of the game for $4,808. When you subtract $1,500, that's a profit of $3,308.